Term sheets are complex and there's a lot going on. And so when I started this video, I thought I could get it down to one short video, but instead there was just way too much to cover. So I ended up creating two separate videos, part one and part two. This is part one. Let's go. What is a term sheet? How do you read it? And how much trust did you put in a term sheet when you are raising funds? Today, we are going to answer any and all questions you could ever have regarding term sheets and how to use them. Hi, I'm Peter, and over the last 15 years, I've reviewed, issued, negotiated, and/or invested in hundreds of term sheets, including some amazing companies like Spotify and Toast. I've also taught hundreds of students the ins and outs of term sheets, how they work, and what to look for both as an investor and an entrepreneur. Today, I'm going to share a lot of those insights with you. But before I jump into that video, I want to hear from you. What are your questions about term sheets? Pop down to the comments and let me know. And while you're there, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel to get more great videos like this. Now, let's jump into what is a term sheet. I like to think of a term sheet a bit like a marriage proposal, albeit one that is a bit more robust than how most people propose today. Just as you would hopefully discuss finances, kids, and other expectations before popping the question to your future spouse, a good term sheet should also lay out the broad strokes of the financial partnership being contemplated. When signed, the signed term sheet is like slipping that ring onto her finger and becoming engaged. Just as there's no absolute guarantee that a marriage will happen once you get engaged, a signed term sheet does mean that both parties want to work together, are amenable to the terms of the deal, and will work together to make it happen. In legal terms, a term sheet is a non-binding document outlining the primary agreement between startup and potential investors. It details the terms under which investors will provide funding to the business owner, including the valuation of the company, the amount of capital being raised, the equity stake to be offered, governance conditions, and several other key investment terms. A good term sheet serves as the foundation for drafting more detailed legal documents once the terms are agreed upon by both parties. In that sense, a term sheet is kind of like a blueprint for a potential investment, much like you would have a blueprint for your house. If you've ever gone through the process of building a house, you know that it starts with the floor plan that lays out the general design for the home. Your term sheet works much the same way. It lays out the terms and conditions between the startup and the investor, but just like a blueprint isn't a house, a term sheet isn't a guarantee of investment. So if a term sheet isn't a guarantee of an investment, why is it so important? Well, let's talk about that. A well-executed term sheet can do the following. 1. Establishing key terms and valuation. The term sheet includes the company's valuation, which is essential for determining how much equity the investors will receive for their investment. 2. It provides clarity and sets expectations. It should clearly outline what the startup and investors can expect from the deal, reducing misunderstandings and conflicts that can come up later on. 3. It should be a good negotiating framework. The term sheet acts as a framework for negotiation, allowing both parties to discuss and modify terms until an agreement is reached. It provides guidance and information around which levers exist that can be pulled or pushed as part of the negotiating process so that both sides can come to an equitable arrangement. 4. Influencing future funding rounds. The terms of earlier funding rounds can oftentimes influence future funding rounds as they often set a precedent for the terms and valuation of the company. So it's important to keep that in mind when you are negotiating your term sheet. The terms and conditions that you put into the term sheet today that will ultimately end up in the legal documents and overall legal structure of the company will have a large impact on future rounds of funding, as it will be the basis by which all future funding rounds are established. They'll start with your documents and then adjust from there. And so ensuring that you have really good documents at the very beginning can be really important, not just for that funding round, but for every subsequent funding round throughout the rest of the life of the company. 5, it provides a good legal and financial foundation. Much as it provides that foundation by influencing future funding rounds, it also forms the basis for drafting legally binding documents, saving time and legal expenses by resolving major issues up front. Closing a price round can be very expensive when you consider the number of hours that go into hiring an attorney and having them negotiate back and forth. Ideally, you want to negotiate the really big things up front with a term sheet where it can be a lot simpler and a lot more affordable, rather than having attorneys that can oftentimes be charging anywhere from $500 to $1,000 an hour negotiating those points later on, only to find that you didn't come to an agreement and are saddled with a very big bill. Usually, if you can agree on the term sheet up front, when you get to the actual closing docs of the deal, the last thing you would want to do is spend all of that time and money just to not be able to get a deal done at the end of the day. Number 6, it provides investor confidence. It just provides them confidence in general. A well-structured term sheet can boost investor confidence, showing that the startup is professional and serious about its business and growth perspectives. It can often help give prospective investors, maybe those that aren't already a party to the term sheet, as well as employees and customers, more confidence in working with the company because they have confidence if an investor is willing to invest and provide that term sheet and there looks to be future funding around the corner. That's the type of company that they want to join or work for or work with. Essentially, the term sheet sets the stage for negotiations, ensures both parties are on the same page, and saves time in the long run. Getting this right is crucial for a successful partnership. So what is on a term sheet? You might be thinking, that's great and all, but what actually goes into a term sheet and how do you read it? Well, there are 5 key components to a term sheet. First is the valuation. Simply put, this is how much the company is worth today before you raise any money. It's like putting a price tag on the entire business. 2 is the equity stake. This is the portion of the company being given to investors in exchange for their money. Think of it like slicing a pie. The bigger the slice, the more of your company they own. 3, voting rights. These are the rights being granted to investors to be able to vote on big decisions in your company. This might include allocation of board seats and/or specific rights tied to important decisions, such as when to sell the company or hiring key executives. 4th, liquidation preference. This means if the company is sold or closed and goes out of business, investors with a liquidation preference are entitled to get their money back first before others. It's like being first in line at the store return counter. This is really important for a lot of investors when making the investment to feel like if things go south, they would have first right to the assets after all of the debt providers have been paid back. Number 5, anti-dilution provisions. This protects investors from their share of the company getting smaller and smaller over time as more shares are created later on. It's like making sure your slice of the pie doesn't get thinner if the pie gets bigger, because it can play a critical role in generating strong returns for investors and ensuring that their rights are protected, since oftentimes those rights are tied to ownership percentage in the company. Thanks for watching part 1. Be sure to check out part 2, where we're going to continue the conversation about term sheets.